this is the panel that we have in front of us. So we have the 4 panelists. So Dr. Peri Jones, Rhys Phillips, Lily Borresen. Oh, apologies, Lee, I've misspelled your name on that slide. And Amie Roberts. And then it's going to be chaired by myself and Grace. So Grace, you want to put on your camera first of all and just say hello. So Grace is here.
Everyone.
Grace is an outreach officer here and works with us as part of the school, and will be curating the questions. We'll be shouting at me if people ask questions through. So Grace is your conduit. I should say you can ask questions anonymously as we go through. Okay. The panelists, if I could ask the panelists to turn on your videos, I will stop the screen share now. And as the panelists turn on their videos, there we go. So they're all on screen. So thank you very much all for coming along. It's great to have you here. We're going to start off with just a 3 to 5 minute introduction to who each of the panelists is, and then we'll open out to questions as we go through. So in no particular order, I think actually it might have been alphabetical order by surname. So Lily, you're up first. So could you just tell us a little bit about what you did as a degree and what you're doing now?
Is it okay if I screen share, yeah? I mean, you're on mute, but okay.
Yeah. Please feel free to screen share.
I saw the nodding. Yeah, so just as kind of an overview, so I graduated my physics masters last year. So I started at Cardiff Uni in 2016 and I graduated summer last year. And since then, I've come over to the University of Cambridge to do a PGCE, which I'll talk about a little bit more at the end. So essentially, for my time at Cardiff, I've kind of got a few images of like the lab stuff. I kind of chose to do straight physics rather than any astrophysics or anything like that, and started specializing in materials and photonics, which is basically anything with light, by the end of my degree. So for my 3rd and 4th year projects, I was looking at 2-dimensional materials, which are just really thin, like atomically thin materials, and looking at the light that's emitted from them and what's interesting about that, like where there's applications in quantum computing and that kind of thing. So at the bottom is kind of like just where I was working in the lab. So if we were working with like loads of cool lasers, and down here on the right is kind of the materials that I was working with. And in the middle, there's kind of a residential that you go on in 4th year called Gregonog. So that's all kind of what made up like the end of my studying and me kind of coming to look at like these materials and light. Outside of kind of my studies, I was kind of involved in the Chaos Society, which is what we call the Physics Society. I was really lucky to live with the president and the vice president for a while, so I was quite heavily involved there. Which was fun. It was kind of like a good way when you're in the middle of your degree to see other physicists, kind of get that advice from older years. There were a few competitions that I got to go through my degree, which was really great for like developing those other skills. So like being really good at like presenting and that kind of thing. So one of the really cool ones that I got to do by my 4th year was I got to go to Edinburgh for this thing called Planks, which was essentially a theoretical physics competition. So we went to Edinburgh for a weekend. We met loads of people from different unis, collaborated a lot. And at the end, there was an exam and prize winners and the opportunity to go to London and all that cool kind of stuff. And kind of most importantly for me, my degree led me to do a physics mentoring project, which was just going into schools once a week, doing kind of experiments. And that's kind of how I got into teaching. And that led me to kind of where I am now. So through my degree, I got all of the cool like theoretical side and the physics, and I got to start teaching. And I kind of decided I really liked the idea of teaching. I really wanted to keep doing it. So I applied to do my postgraduate certificate of education. And that's essentially what I'm doing now. I'm training to be a secondary school science teacher. So I get to basically go in at the minute and play with some practical kit because everything's online, and just plan and teach my lessons to all my classes. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the year since I graduated. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that's Lily. So graduated just last summer. So next in, as I said, in alphabetical order, if my alphabet is correct, we're to Peri. So Peri was an undergrad and a postgraduate here. So did a PhD here as well. So Peri, do you want to say a little bit about your time here and what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I haven't got any slides to share with everybody.
Absolutely fine, don't worry.
Sorry, everybody just has to stare at my face. Yeah, so I did my undergrad in Cardiff University and my postgrad. I started Cardiff in 2009, and I originally wanted or thought I was going to go into medical physics, but I wasn't certain, I wasn't set on doing that, so I decided to change it from the physics with medical physics to just straight physics, and I did the 4-year masters, integrated masters. And then whilst I was doing my master's project, I thought I really enjoy research and I really enjoyed my project. So looked into doing postgrads and applied for a few places, but I decided to stay in Cardiff and kind of continue on doing what I was doing in my 4th year. So did my PhD in Cardiff as well. So spent another 4 years there. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And I did consider staying in research. And I know that from that word cloud earlier, there was quite a popular option from you guys as a career after doing a degree with physics. But I knew that that wasn't just the only option, so I wanted to kind of explore other things. And I really, really enjoyed doing science communication throughout my undergrad and my postgrad. So I'm a fluent Welsh speaker as well, so I've done quite a bit of radio interviews and a bit of TV stuff for the Welsh programme S4C. And I did a few things in the university, did a few festivals and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed, very similar to Lily actually, I really enjoyed kind of inspiring other people and teaching other kids and students that physics is actually fun and really, really interesting and applies to absolutely everything. So after my PhD, I decided that I'd go into science communication, and I worked for Science Very Simple. And that was incredibly rewarding and so much fun. I went to schools across the country, somehow became kind of a translator as well, so translated quite a few of their shows into Welsh so we could take these shows to Welsh speaking schools, which is personally quite an important thing because of my Welsh background, and I thought that was great. Travelled the world, went to Hong Kong for their science festival out there, which was so much fun. That was incredible. We were presenting in this big theatre and were outside doing all sorts of experiments and shows and stuff, and that was really good fun. But ultimately, I loved science communication, but I felt like I was missing. I missed research, and I knew that I didn't want to just stay in one specific area of science, but I still, there was something missing. I wanted to go out and learn more about new technologies and stuff like that. So I started looking into different careers, and I'd come across intellectual property and patents when I was an undergrad, and I'd gone for work experience at a firm in Cardiff back in my 4th year, and really enjoyed it, or as much as they could give me, because of kind of they can't give you much to do because everything's supposed to be very confidential. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I started rethinking that career option again, and I asked around a few people and started looking into it online, and I decided to apply for a couple of places, and I was lucky enough that I managed to get a couple of interviews, and there are a couple of rounds of interviews in different firms. And after a year working in Science Made Simple, my contract came to an end. But luckily, I'd got a new contract with my current employer, Able and Ray, and I'm still there, nearly 3 years now. And you start as a trainee patent attorney. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's essentially you have to go into it with a background in science or a STEM subject, or could be any kind of science, really, biology, chemistry. And patents protect inventions or new inventive inventions. And even so, I'm a trainee patent attorney because I've got a background in science. I've got an undergraduate degree and a postgraduate degree, but you have to learn the law. So I'm still training because there are a lot of exams to do and pass, but it's really fun because I get to work with loads of different people, inventors from different backgrounds in physics, engineering, IT, and it's great to work with these people to try and different businesses, and you're essentially working with them to try and protect their ideas and to give them some kind of value. And I get to talk to people about brand new inventions that haven't been disclosed yet, and are, you know, at the forefront of technology. So yeah, anyway, that's me. So I'll let you move on to someone else now.
Right. Well, I think we'll dig into a few of those things later on, I'm sure, if people have got questions about what that all means. Thank you, Peri. So if my alphabet is correct, that takes us next to Rhys. So Rhys Phillips was also, actually everyone here was an undergrad here, so I can stop saying was an undergrad here. Rhys, do you want to tell us what you're up to now?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, I apologize for the very bright light. It's because, and this is going to sound like I'm showing off, it's because I live in the south of France. It's very sunny outside, and even though I have closed the thin curtain I have, I'm still bathed in very bright light here. So I didn't have time to like wind the shutters down on the building. Yeah, so I studied at Cardiff. I like to think it was only a few years ago, but I graduated in 2008. And in fact, I studied a joint honours degree in maths and physics. And I did this because, honestly, at school, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a career. So I guess it's the same situation for many people. So I chose the subjects that I enjoyed and that I was good at. And then I did 3 years at Cardiff. And then I graduated, or at least I finished my exams before. Technically, I hadn't had the graduation ceremony at this point. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but my parents were quite insistent that I should start looking for a job. I don't think they relished the idea of me reappearing back home without any plans. So I went. In fact, there was a careers fair. I remember it specifically in City Hall that Cardiff University had organised, where they gave a very helpful piece of paper with a grid on it, and it listed all the companies down the left and all the subjects across the top, and then you could just kind of go down and look for all the companies that had a cross next to maths or physics. And I just went and spoke to basically everyone. And one of those companies was a company that at the time was called EADS, which was the company that owns Airbus, and has since rebranded to become just called Airbus anyway. And the guy manning that stand really seemed to take an interest in me in terms of not just my studies, but also my background and my other interests. And he said, he gave me a code to put in. He said, if you apply for the graduate scheme, put this code in, because then I'll know that I met you, and it will help in your application process. So I applied, and I joined the graduate training scheme at EADS in Newport. So I was able to keep living in Cardiff with friends that I had made at university, and keep those kind of social circles. I joined the graduate scheme because this meant that I didn't, it kind of was my way of delaying making a decision about what I would do, because I got to rotate through the company doing different things, different projects, different teams. But it turns out that the second team that I joined is where I stayed for a long time, because I got to the second team and it was a team that looks at how we protect aircraft against lightning strikes. So in fact, the role of this team was to test new materials, blow them up in a lightning laboratory at Cardiff University, and that sounded quite cool. So I joined that team, and I spent almost 10 years in that team in the UK, researching in this topic, and also in another technical area of fuel electrostatics, so understanding the buildup of static charge as you refuel an aircraft. So I was really doing research, but not in the academic world. And in fact, I'd always been interested in research, but the chance to do it in industry was something a bit different. So I did that, and then in 2018 there was a big restructure of the company and our research organization, and I was basically told, well, you can take a redundancy package, or you can move to the south of France and continue similar research topics there. And I kind of felt redundancy or French food, French weather, French wine. And I surprisingly took this decision. I was also mindful that maybe 3 years later, Brexit would not make such a decision so easy. So it was an opportunity. I was just on the cusp of starting the process to buy a house in Cardiff. So it was also before I was tied down with a house as well. So it seemed like a good time, a good opportunity. So for nearly 3 years now, I've been based down here in Toulouse, which is the headquarters of Airbus. So it's where we assemble all the aircraft. So like the wings are made in Wales and they're shipped down or flown down to Toulouse. And that's where we stick them on the, well, it's not the technical term, but yeah, stick them on the planes. And I for the first couple of years, I
think we've lost audio there with Rhys because a bad connection.
And then about, I don't know, 18 months ago or just over a year ago, I was approached by another team at Airbus, a completely different team, and asked if I would change my role. And it took a lot of thinking about, but finally I said yes. And what I'm now doing is completely unrelated. I'm now leading a team in an IT project. Airbus made the decision to completely scrap Microsoft Office and move to the Google suite of products. So we no longer have Microsoft Word, we have Google Docs, for example. And this is a big change for a huge company. And so I was asked to come and lead the team that would manage the change and adoption aspects of this. So a completely non-technical role, but a chance to develop some leadership skills and some management skills, so that in a few years' time, when maybe Airbus launches a new aircraft and they suddenly need a whole load of technical team leaders, I'm hoping that I'll be in a position where I will have already developed the technical skills and now have had the chance to develop the leadership skills, that I'll be a good fit for like a technical team leader in the future. And so that's where I am and what I'm doing. And in terms of what I think I might do next, it's difficult to know, but I'm going to stay in France for the time being because, because of a pandemic and a Brexit, two things that are basically making me stay put. But also, it's really an interesting place to live, and I would say that that studying a science degree gives you a whole load of opportunities like this, and so that's where I am. And yeah, I guess we'll hand over to the last speaker, but more than happy to take some questions on all of that later.
Yes, we've got a few questions coming in. Thank you very much. I like the idea of them flying wings down to the south of France. It feels very meta to me somehow. Right, we'll move on to the last panelist to introduce herself. So Amie Roberts is based here in Cardiff. So Amie, tell us about you and what you did and what you're doing.
Hi, my name's Amie. I studied at Cardiff and I did physics with medical physics. Within my degree, I did a third year project in nuclear medicine. So medical physics covers a wide range of subjects such as nuclear medicine, ultrasound, CT, X-ray, radiotherapy, clinical engineering. But because I was introduced to nuclear medicine in my third year project, I loved it. I worked in the hospital in 2 days a week, seeing how the medical physics department ran. And I also did a project on optimizing image quality in nuclear medicine. So from there then, I graduated in 2015. I then went to Swansea University to do physics with physics in medical physics, or radiation physics. And I also got a job in Swansea Hospital as a medical physicist. So I trained in nuclear medicine, so that is my specialty. So nuclear medicine is using radioactivity for the purpose of imaging or therapies. So I studied there and I trained and I qualified then as a clinical scientist. Once I qualified as a clinical scientist, I came back to Cardiff and I work in the University Hospital of Wales now. And I am currently studying alongside doing my full-time job, PhD, which is in the optimization of new technologies for the detection of gamma rays, specifically for nuclear medicine. And I've loved my career. So clinical scientist, if anybody knows, is basically we combine the physics and the science that we know for the beneficial of patient health. My main role is to develop the service. So we always come up with research ideas. We make patient-centered care. So if we adapt our normal protocols for individuals and things like that. And because we're working with radiation, my main job is to make sure all the current situations meet the current guidelines as well and legislation. During my time throughout my career, I've been an active member of the Institute of Physics and Engineering in Medicine, so IPEM. I'm currently the Welsh chair for IPEM. I do a lot of outreach stuff, so we get in normal times and in normal circumstances, we would supply work experience in medical physics. I'm currently running a third year project with some of the students in nuclear medicine as well. And I work very closely with cancer research because my PhD is funded by cancer research. So I work very closely with cancer research to look at detection of cancers and metastases. So I'm looking at bone cancers at the moment. So yeah, my job is quite varied. It has a lot of the physics elements. However, medicine plays a massive role in it. So I work collaboratively with several members of the team within the hospital. So from consultants to nurses to everywhere. So I'm in the middle of basically the patient-centered care, and my input, the science and the way I attack problems, because that's why the NHS works so brilliantly. They employ many different people. We really make a difference to patients' lives, really. So yeah, I went into the more healthcare science rather than straight physics. And during my time, I've done a lot of research as well. So that's me in a nutshell. But I'm happy to take any questions on clinical science in particular.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those introductions from all our panelists. We've got a couple of questions that have been coming in, so I'll start to ask those. I think the first one that's come in is actually for any or all panelists. So I'll probably ask you to wave an actual hand so I can see who wants to speak. Is probably the easiest way of doing that. If you've got something to add to this. So what would your advice be when applying for jobs if you can't find one you really love reasonably soon after graduating? Is it better to apply for other jobs, or perhaps to wait for a few months, if possible, until there are job openings you really want? So thinking sort of to the end of a degree, what did you do at the end of that? So that's something that I think to some extent kind of Peri and Rhys both touched on in their introductions. So Rhys, do you want to say something first about that?
Sure. Yeah, I spent, to start with, I spent some time deliberating on whether I was going to do a master's. I just did a bachelor's, in fact, and I was deliberating about whether to continue studying or whether to go straight into work. And I couldn't decide if I was to do a master's, well, what would the subject be? And I didn't want to do that and find it was a subject that finally I didn't end up working in. So I decided to start looking for work, but it took a little bit of time. So I was actually, for 6 months, I was working back in as a waiter in the restaurants that I'd worked in during school and the summer holidays before that, whilst I was applying for graduate schemes and things like this. And so I took I would say a bit of a risk. I didn't really know what to expect at on the graduate scheme at Airbus. But it seemed like there was a strong chance that I would find something there that was interesting, and it ticked some other boxes, like being able to continue staying in Cardiff, which was important for me because I was very heavily involved in a lot of music groups and a local radio station and a bunch of other things. So if possible, I wanted at that time to hang around in Cardiff. But yeah, I got lucky a little bit because actually it was the first graduate scheme I applied to. And there was a big delay because they had to do security checks before they confirmed the place. So I was told in September I had the job and it would start in January. So there was quite a big gap. But I was a bit lucky. But I would say that if you're in a situation where you can't find anything that you're interested in, maybe that you consider to be what you want to be as a long-term interest, maybe think about, well, what skills could I be interested in developing in the short term? Because maybe you can find something that isn't what you want to do for the rest of your life, but could be something that would be interesting for a year or so or two to upskill yourself, give you that extra background, and that in itself will put you maybe to be more interesting on your CV when you come to apply for something else.
Sorry, lost the unmute button there. Anyone else got anything to add? Thanks, Rhys. That's great. Yeah, Amie, go.
I would say I can only answer from a clinical scientist and medical physics point of view. If a job opening doesn't come out as when you graduated, there's a lot of assistant roles, a lot of training, a lot of apprenticeship schemes that are to get you into medical physics. But just having that, applying for jobs within the NHS just gives you that experience of developing your skills, developing, the values and speaking to patients, and, gives you key fundamental development skills so when you do apply for a different job, you then stand out. So don't worry if you don't get it straight away after you graduated. It is very difficult to get on as a scientist. So, just work towards working in the NHS and getting jobs like that. That would be my advice.
And I think of all the panelists, I mean, most of you have kind of got one, either you're very, very near the start of your career. So Lily is obviously just in the first year of post degree work. Most of you stayed with the same company, although Rhys, you mentioned having different roles within that company. Peri, I guess you changed careers a couple of times, and that's something that it's really common these days. I mean, you must all have friends who are doing real jobs as well. I'd like to think I'm doing a real job as well, but I'm still in the university. So Peri, can you say a little bit about people changing careers, and you've done that, and how you find, has it been a big shock to the system to go from science communication to patent attorney and so on?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody else said. It can be disheartening when you apply for a job and you don't get it, and especially if you put everything into your application and that you've decided that is the career I want to do. But yeah, I went into physics and decided to stay in the kind of broad physics area rather than specifying, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do and what kind of career I wanted to go into. And I thought that would keep my options open. When it came down to deciding what I wanted to do after my master's, I decided to stay in research because I felt I was enjoying it at the time. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to go into, but I knew that doing a PhD would also open up so many doors for me, and it would provide me with a lot of skills that are and have been really valuable for my current position now, because I have to deal with long documents. You have to read a lot, and you need to understand the technology, and those are key skills that you develop when you're doing research. Going then into science communication came out of something that I enjoyed. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it as a full career forever. When I was working for Science Made Simple, it was great, but I didn't want to do it as a full-time career. I loved doing it, and I still do love doing it as as something that I do in my spare time. But it was I guess daunting to think, well, if I don't want to do this as a full-time job, where do I go now? And again, you start looking into it, you start making a list, and you narrow down that list, and you start applying for jobs, and you don't get the job, and it feels disheartening. But you need to just remember that what you're doing currently, you can use what you're doing. So science communication came in handy when I was applying for a job as a patent attorney, because it showed that I had all these communication skills. I could take information from researchers from the lab and convert it into essentially a language that people can understand just off the street, or for students in schools to understand what is going on in the lab at the cutting edge of technology. So that was I just tried to, and what people should remember is to try and I guess manipulate what they're doing to try and fit those key roles and key skills that you need for that job, and just to remember that if you don't get what you want, or if you don't get that job, don't get too disheartened. Just try and use that time to develop yourself and your skills. Try and take feedback as well. I think that's really important. Get that feedback on board. Where could you improve, or what could you do different? And maybe there are some areas that you could improve, and maybe your current work experience or your job or something, you can try and manipulate it to improve those skills, so that next time you can get that job, hopefully.
I think that taking feedback is incredibly important as people, even if you stay in the same career, taking feedback to move, get promotions and so on is all incredibly important to take feedback in a hopefully constructive feedback as well. Okay, we'll move on to another question, which is slightly different in focus. This is a question. I want you to cast your mind back. So I might come to Lily first for this, as being the slightly more recent graduate. Cast your mind back, in Lily's case, a few years, and then also a bit more recently. So it's all about transitioning from student into the working world. But I want to broaden it out and say also from school to university. Now, of course, at the moment, everything is disrupted to some huge degree. So let's look at this from the before times, the normal times of transitioning from school to university, and then from university to career. And the specific question is, was the workload significantly different? And is there any way to sort of prepare yourself for that? So can I come to Lily first and talk about that sort of transition from school to university?
I think the thing that changed most was kind of going from like school, which has the routine of a day, like you're in at this time for registration, you have this hour with this subject, this hour with this subject, and then you go home, you have that time for like extracurriculars and then homework. It's all very rigorously packed in. You have less contact hours when you go to uni, and your time is a bit more your own, which is great because you can go and do all these cool things, or you have a bit more time to kind of prioritize what you want. But it can mean that when you're still getting like a lot of work coming in, you just have to, it's a different kind of workload. You have to manage it yourself, which I think is the reason that everyone calls it a big step. Like there is a lot of work and there is a big change in first year, but it's definitely manageable. And I think one of the biggest things was a lecturer saying to me, like, treat it like a 9-to-5 job, even though you're a student. Like if you say that you're going to work between 9 and 5 and you work as hard as you can, and then you take that break in the evening, everything kind of works out pretty all right. And yeah, I guess there's times where it doesn't always stick to that plan, but that like really helps. I think the workload is big, but it's not insurmountable. It's just different. And it is kind of a big transition period. You're kind of moving out. I think since I've left, again, there's been like a change in what my responsibilities are. So rather than just having to get my work in for a deadline to kind of keep the ball rolling, I'm now thinking about sort of professional obligations. Like I need to manage these admin tasks on top of my work. I need to know kind of what children are doing in the day to be able to do my job. Again, you still have like that same amount of time in the day. It's just learning to manage it in a different way, I think, is the change and the challenge, rather than any kind of increase of demand that's too big.
Thank you. And what about any of the rest of it? You want to add something to the going from university work to a job, a paid job? Anything to add, do you think? We can, no? Okay, we can move on to, thank you, Lily, for that. That's a thorough answer, thank you. Let's go to actually something, Amie, that you mentioned. So you mentioned other options to work in, so this is medical physics again, in clinical practice as well, perhaps, medical imaging, that kind of thing. So more broadly, beside exactly what you're doing, what kind of careers are available in medical physics?
Yeah, there's thousands of, within the medical physics is such a broad umbrella. You can include in medical physics anything from clinical engineering right the way through to radiotherapy and PET and all medical imaging. So clinical scientist is basically whatever route you feel comfortable in doing, you can find a job role for that. If you're very patient focused, as in you like the hands-on experience, talking to patients, getting that interaction with patients, then there is a job for you, such as leading a therapy service. So you'll run clinics, ultrasound. For example, I work in ultrasound 2 days a week. I see about 50 patients over them 2 days, so you get a lot of patient interaction, and that with ultrasound, that's looking, diagnosing a patient. So yes, it is medical imaging, but you're making a difference to their treatment pathway. And then you've got your behind the scenes work. So if you got, for example, radiotherapy, all radiotherapy scientists, they do all the treatment planning, they get all the scans from the patient, but they don't directly see the patient. So whatever fits your skill set, there is a job within medical physics. So it's such a broad range, and it's very difficult to cover all of them. But if you want to talk any more about if you want to get more information, I can put you in touch with the most relevant person then.
So yeah, as Amie said, I mean, if you have questions about this, any of this, then we'll put up some contact details at the end. So if you want to ask, drop us an email and we can pass it on if there's specific questions. Thank you. It's a kind offer, Amie. Okay, next two questions are kind of, they're linked. And so I'll ask them together and see who wants to chime in. So the first one is, how hard is it to apply for jobs without previous employment? And this person said their applications to jobs always feel a bit bare when they're asking for previous experience, which is obviously often a thing on a job ad. And then combined with that, someone in the chat has asked, what have people typically done during a year in industry? And actually, I want to broaden that out slightly towards just general work experience during a degree. Because a year in industry, or some sort of sandwich course or professional placement is one of the things you can do, but there are obviously summer placements as well. So so that's, yeah, how hard is it to apply for jobs without that experience? And I guess the second one is, what about getting that experience while you're doing an undergrad? Anyone want to take that first? Or I shall roll a dice and pick some.
I can say a few words if you want, but I did a bunch of work experience between my second and third year, but it wasn't an attempt to get experience on my CV. It was an attempt to try to work out what I wanted to do. So I spent 1 week at my old secondary school in the maths and physics department teaching. I spent 1 week at an accountancy firm, which confirmed that I definitely didn't want to be an accountant. I spent 1 week at Cardiff University shadowing PhD students in the School of Physics. And I spent, I did one other thing, but clearly it was so thrilling, I already forgot what it was. I did 4 weeks, I can't even remember what the fourth one was, but I did 4 different things in 4 weeks to try to work out what I wanted to do. And this was off my own back. It was not through any kind of formal summer placement. And I think when I was studying, because I did joint honours, the option of the sandwich degree wasn't possible at that time if you were doing the joint maths physics degree. So it was really for a different purpose, but for sure it helped. And I guess I didn't have the direct problem of the looking for experience, because I went via a graduate training scheme where, of course, they expect you to be coming directly from university, and therefore they're not looking for that experience. And so I kind of dodged that bullet, I guess, in that way.
Anyone else want to take on life jobs or getting experience that, Lily, that you or your friends may have done, I guess, during that?
So I did like a couple internships over the summer. So I did one with British Antarctic Survey that basically do research in the South Pole. And that was like my first like proper, not in uni kind of a job, getting paid. And it was a lot about like talking about the skills that I had when I didn't have that experience behind me. So I was doing machine learning, which I'd never done before, but I had been coding in uni, and kind of talking about that stuff, but really showing that I had an enthusiasm for it. It's kind of what my supervisor said, kind of clinched it for me. And then for like, kind of in a similar vein, I saw that internships as a way to get experience beyond what my degree could give me. So the first one I did was in oceanography and machine learning, which wasn't really something I could do as part of a physics degree so easily. My second one was in early diagnostic and preventative medicine and looked at nanorobotics, which was also not in the remit of my physics degree. And I think kind of going broad like that meant when it came to like the next thing, I could kind of pull skills from them, which not everyone's going to have like that broad range of experience, but kind of recognizing the skills that you've gotten from them, even if it's like an internship or if it's part of your degree, being able to like talk about what it's given you afterwards at the end is kind of like the important thing that helps get the next thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. And those skills is really, really important. Obviously, a physics degree is all about learning a bunch of kind of physics knowledge, if you like. There's a bunch of knowledge that you have to learn. But actually, the really valuable thing, I think it's fair to say, is the skills that you learn in doing that. So on the work ladder, we had problem solving and all sorts of things. And coding was something Lily mentioned that you learn as part of a physics degree as well. If there's nothing anyone wants to throw into that, I'll go on to another question. This is probably aimed or probably best answered by perhaps initially by Peri. So if you wanted to do a job in a specific field of physics, lasers or astronomy or whatever, is it paramount to do a PhD, or do you go there after? Can you get there through experience alone, without the PhD? And then can you specialize later, I guess is the next bit of this question. Can you do a general thing and then specialize later? So any thoughts on that? And then actually I've got one more question that's just come in that I want to ask at the end as well.
That's, I guess it's, so if you don't know what you want to go into, like I did, I started doing physics with medical physics because I really enjoyed medical physics, or what I did in my first year. And I did a week work experience during, this links to the previous question, I did some work experience in a hospital in North Wales in kind of radio imaging and stuff like that. And I wasn't sure if that was what I wanted to do. So I broadened my degree out and I decided to tag on an extra year so I can think. So I changed it to the integrated masters. So that was kind of broadening it out, then I really enjoyed my masters, because you're focusing on a more specific project. And then when you're doing a PhD, of course, you're becoming an expert in a very small field of science, or physics or astronomy. If you want to go into a specific area of physics and a very niche expertise, then doing a PhD, I guess, is the way to go, because if you really enjoy that area and you enjoy the work and you enjoy the research, then go for it, because that's what I did. I really enjoyed the project. I really loved researching, and often you're constantly hitting a wall because you're not going anywhere, or you feel like you're not making any progress, but it all does slowly, and you're working in a very small specific field, and that can then lead you into working into a specific area and doing the research. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if you want to work if you wanted to work in just the field of lasers generally, or aircrafts or something. I mean, I'm not an expert, Rhys is the expert there, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a PhD in material science or something, or composites, to go and work on aircrafts. So I guess it just depends on what you enjoy and what you want to go into.
I think before Rhys comes to that, I'm going to tackle another question actually, which is related, that I think will might influence or might give Rhys something else to talk about. So someone said that a lot of the jobs that they look of following a degree, I'm not sure whether this is someone who's looking at a degree to start a degree or is currently doing a degree, but look like they seem to be wanting engineers more than physicists. Is it silly to apply for those? Is the question asked? That's not my words, that's their words. So yeah, Rhys, if you fold that into your answer. If you could.
Yeah, well, it fits very well, in fact, because well, first of all, the graduate scheme, Airbus does not offer a physics graduate scheme. It offers an engineering graduate scheme and a business graduate scheme for people who want to go into finance, HR, etc. So it was the engineering graduate scheme I joined, and for sure, they do not only take people with engineering degrees. They're looking for people who they see potential to become a well-rounded engineer in the future. So that's the first point. And then if I take my research team that I worked with in the UK, we were a small team. There were 5 of us, and our job titles were research engineers. And we were doing, it was really engineering, not just physics, because what we were doing was influencing directly technology that was going onto an aircraft. We were really developing technology that flew. And in the team of 5 of us, there was 1 person who had an engineering master's, 2 of us with joint honours maths physics degrees, and 2 physicists. So out of the 5 of us, only 1 had an engineering background, and in fact it wasn't even aerospace, it was electrical engineering. The rest of us were physicists or mathematicians and physicists, with a mixture of PhDs, masters and bachelors within the team. So I think that in industry, that becomes less important. What's more important is, are you flexible? Do you have the motivation to adapt and to learn and to be shaped into the right role that works for you, as opposed to just what did you study, which is of course important, but it's not the only thing.
Thank you. We're just about at the hour, so we should probably stop there, and where the panelists have jobs to go to, no doubt. I guess Lily's on half term as well at the moment, but may well have other commitments. What I'm going to share very briefly is the poll we asked at the start. So the same poll that you had before to start with, and I'd like you to list 3 skills. So we'll skip the careers one, but we'll just ask skills. So if you want to, while we're just finishing off, list 3 skills that you think are associated with a physics degree, and we'll see if there's any difference based on what we've done. While that's going on, thank you very much to all the panelists for being here and answering those questions. Thank you for the questions that have come in from people. It's been fascinating to hear what your thoughts are, what your questions are, and to hear the answers that the panelists have given. So thank you very much to Lily, to Peri, to Amie, and to Rhys for that. Thank you to everyone for watching. And while I watch the word cloud building, we'll finish there, and you're all free to go to your respective places, wherever that may be. Thank you very much, everyone.